So I should probably start off with an apology because this video is so long overdue. So this is an update for my Sew Your Stash challenge. If you don't know what Sew Your Stash challenge is, I don't blame you. It was a year since my last video, but it is a challenge that I started a few years ago, where when I start a new project, instead of going out and purchasing new supplies for it, I would instead first shop from my own stash and see what all I could try to use for my stash first, instead of always buying and buying and buying and never using what I have collected up. So that is what this challenge is about, and this is my update video that is about 9 months overdue because I tried to do them about every 3 months and I obviously failed at that. So I'm going to talk about a lot of the highlights and the stash busting wins that I've had in the last year. Obviously it's not going to be every single thing that I've made using my stash because that would take forever, and this is already going to be a long enough video. To start off, I had a massive stash busting win in this last year. It is the most stash I have used in this whole challenge, and it was when I made over 660 masks. I made almost all of those using my own stash. A few friends of mine did donate a little bit of fabric, but the vast majority of it came from my own stash of cotton fabric, and I am so glad I was able to do that. Not only use the skills that I have, but also use the supplies that I had on hand to do something nice for other people and donate. I donated almost all of those masks to a Access Medical type place that requested them, as well as to family and friends. And so that used yard after yard after yard after yard of cotton fabric from my stash, which was amazing. And after I made all of those, I was actually left with an entire drawer full of scraps and trying to figure out what to do with them. I did not want a huge pile of scraps hanging around forever, and so I was kind of on the lookout for a project that I could use them for, and I came across this picture on Instagram. Instagram was actually like suggesting people that I might want to follow, and I saw this picture and was like, yes, I want to do that. And it was an ombre puff quilt. I love anything ombre, and this project just spoke to me. As soon as I saw the picture, I was like, I need to make that with these scraps. So the person had actually just posted a tutorial on how to make this quilt. So I went and watched the video to see if like the scraps that I have, if the measurements would work out for this, because all of my scrap pieces were smaller than 7.5 by 8.5 or whatever size it was I was using for masks. They were all smaller than that. So I watched the tutorial and everything and was like, this is gonna work. So I used that huge pile of scraps. I spent like 2 hours laying them all out to see if I could kind of make an ombre out of them, even though they were all very completely random fabrics. And I got one that I was pretty happy with, and so I decided I was going to make this puff quilt. Had no idea if I even had enough fabric to do it or anything. I just set my mind to it, and I started in about 2 months ago. I actually started it, and I finished it last week. It took a long time, but I am very happy with how it turned out. I will link down below to the tutorial that I used for the majority of my project. I changed a few things toward the very end, but the vast majority of it I did follow the tutorial pretty closely by Lo and Behold Stitchery, I think was the name. I'll link it below. So yeah, very happy with it. I used that huge pile of scraps. I also used some cotton poly blend fabric that wasn't good for making masks and really wasn't good for anything else. And I used flannel for my stash instead of batting. I used a vintage sheet for the backing. I used lots of polyfill for my stash. So there was just so much stash busting going on. It was amazing. And then I did have to go out and purchase pearl cotton for the like hand quilting tie thing that I did on it. But in total, I spent like maybe $5 on supplies to make this entire puff quilt, and it turned out so amazing and I absolutely love it. I will have a video coming out very soon showing the entire process of making it, and yeah, keep an eye out for that. It should be out in just a week or two after this one is posted. And speaking of vintage sheets, I used one for the backing of that quilt, and I have a lot of sheets in my stash. I used to buy them. I used to buy vintage character sheets to use as like really cool novelty fabric. I also used to just buy really nice sheets because they are good yardage to use for different projects. I haven't really been using them in a long time though, so this was a way that I used up one of them. And then actually last fall, I made my daughter's Halloween costume mostly from a sheet that I painted and stiffened and did all kinds of cool stuff too. And I have a video on that, by the way. So that video and any other video that I mention will be linked in the video description box. So make sure to click the show more so you can find all of the links if you want to check anything out. But I used a sheet for that, and I've used a couple of sheets to make mock-ups for different cosplay costumes. And so that's one way to use up things from my stash. And like one of the mock-ups was a complete fail. Like the sizing was so far off, but I did not feel bad because like I used a portion of a sheet that I had paid like $1 for. So really it wasn't that much of a waste, and now I know that pattern's not going to work out for me. But anyway, speaking of last fall, so let's kind of back up because I wanted to make a lot more clothing. So I haven't done a lot of clothing in the past several years other than like some costumes and things because my size was kind of going up and down a lot and things like that, but I've kind of settled into one size whether I like it or not. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna make some more clothes for me that, you know, I can improve my skills of sewing garments, fitting garments, and use up some of this fabric from my stash because it's easier to use up like quilting cotton, basic cotton, things like that, like I did with the masks and the puff quilt and just lots of different types of sewing projects, but it's harder to use up upholstery fabrics or, you know, clothing type fabrics. So I wanted to do more of that and get those fabrics into the rotation of being used. So last fall, I made 2 pairs of dungarees for myself. This is a project I've been wanting to make for over a year by that point and had just not gotten around to it. I didn't have time to make projects like that when I was posting videos every single week because I could only spend my time making a video and there was no time left over for other projects. So when I went down to not posting every week, I was able to finally make these garments. And so I made a pair of dungarees from a denim for my stash that I'd gotten in like at a like swap and sell thing, and it ended up being a lower quality denim than I realized. So even though I really love that pair of dungarees, they are not going to last long. I already ripped them once and I patched it and everything, but they're not going to last forever. So I made another pair using the bolt of denim that I had purchased 3 years ago, I believe. I bought a bolt of 15 yards of denim because it was cheaper to buy those 15 yards in bulk online than it was to buy the like 4 yards that I actually needed for the certain project in a local store. So once I used that 4 yards up, the bolt had paid for itself, but I still had that remaining 11 yards. So I've been trying to come up with creative ways to use that denim. So one of the ways was by making another pair of dungarees, and on that one I was able to improve the fit in a few areas and use up some of that fabric, and I really like how it turned out. And the way that I deal with having a whole bolt of something is I cut off about the amount I think I will need, plus a little extra because, you know, just in case. I serge the cut edges and I pre-wash it, and then I use however much I need of it. So I cut off a little, you know, a yard or 3/4 a yard or so more than what I expected to need. And I was left with this chunk of denim that was the width of the fabric, which was about 60 inches. And then it was like 22 inches at the tallest here and like 12 inches over here and stuff. And I had this piece just like hanging around, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? So last week I got the idea to make my daughter a like overall dress. I don't really know what it's called. Jumper, pinafore, dungaree dress. I don't know. It's using this pattern right here that I showed in my last pattern haul video, and I made view D down here. So it calls for a yard of fabric. I had quite a bit less than a yard of fabric, but I was like, I'm gonna make this work. And I did. I cut the fabric like going this way instead of this way, and cut all the facings out of cotton fabric, which I would have done anyway because that cuts down on the bulk. But I made the cutest little outfit for my daughter out of this like scrap of denim that shouldn't have been enough for anything, but I made it work and I love it. So I was so glad that I was able to use this random piece that didn't seem like it was enough for anything. And my daughter is in love with the outfit. She's already worn it twice, and I only finished it 3 days ago. So yeah, and she had requested clothes with cats. So I grabbed some of the pearl cotton that was left over from making the puff quilt, and I used it to hand embroider a cat. There is a bug walking right across my screen, so I apologize for that. Sorry. I drew the outline of a cat face on the back of the bib piece because she said she didn't want a pocket, and then I sewed a back stitch on that outline, and it was super cute. And then when I lined that piece, like, you don't even see the back of the stitching or anything. It's super cute. And now I want to add hand embroidery on pretty much everything now. But yeah, that was a huge win because not only did I make the dungarees out of that bolt of denim, but then I made the little outfit from the leftover scrap, and it's so cute. Anyway, I'm losing track of where I'm supposed to be. So anyway, I've been trying to sew lots of clothes, and yeah. So about the time early summer hit, I was done making most of the masks that I was going to make, and was like, okay, I want to get back to sewing clothing again, but I didn't really know where to start. So there's this dress that I've had in my closet for a while, and it didn't really fit me right. It was a little like loose up here, a little too short, and I got the idea to try to turn it into a vintage inspired swimming ensemble. So and it was actually, I was supposed to like do a photo shoot in it and stuff, but that didn't work out. But so to go along with that, I knew I would need a pair of bloomers. So I grabbed some scuba fabric from my stash, and that's all that I know that it is. It was labeled as scuba when I bought it, and so whatever that means. It does not feel like a wetsuit or anything like that. But I had this leftover chunk of fabric, and again, it was like not enough according to the pattern, but I used a pattern from the 80s to make these bloomers. they're just like gathered waist here and gathered at the bottom, and they were not as long as I wanted them to be and as I needed them to be. So I grabbed some lace from my stash and added that at the bottom, and I think they turned out so cute. I actually have worn them a few times just like with a t-shirt because they're so cute and comfortable. So yeah, that was like a really nice, like, ooh, that was an easy project and it worked so well and I love them. And again, I used a random leftover chunk of fabric from another project, so it was perfect. Done with that fabric now. So that just like kept encouraging me and keeping the ball rolling on, I want to make more clothes. I want to make more clothes. So, yeah. I love when that happens, when you're just encouraged and, you know, keep wanting to do new things. And also, as I mentioned earlier, upholstery fabric or decorator fabric. I have a hard time using it once it gets in my stash. I like it, but then I'm like, but what do I do with it? So I did end up making a new tote bag tutorial using a decorator fabric. And it turned out really cute. It's a cute bag. It's a popular tutorial. And don't forget, all the videos I mentioned will be linked down below. But yeah, that was a decorator fabric I was able to use, so score there. A few weeks ago, I posted a video showing the pinafore that I had made based on a book illustration. That was not actually using stash, the dress itself. But after that video, I was inspired to also make the shirt that was in the book illustration, and that was from stash. I happened to have a decorator fabric that was really, really close in color and close enough in print that I felt it represented the book illustration well enough. And so after I had like shared that project in the video, I did create a shirt to go along with the pinafore dress, and it turned out really cute. I love how it looks together. And so not only did I make a new garment, but I used a decorator fabric for it that I've had since 2011, I think. I bought the entire bolt of it for $5 at a garage sale, or no, garage sale? Yeah, garage sale. $3. It was $3 for the whole bolt at a garage sale. And then most recently, as far as garments go, was a vest that I had made. I've been watching a ton of Rachel Maxey videos here on YouTube. Rewatching videos because I've watched them all before. And she always wears a lot of vests, and they just look so cute. And I love vests, but I don't actually own any right now. And I've been searching at thrift stores for quite a while for a good vest, but none of them fit me, none of them have the right look. So I decided to make one for my stash. Let me grab the pattern, because I need to make this vest anyway for a costume that I'm working on, but I need to make some alterations for the costume. I need to make it longer here, leave off the collar, narrow the shoulder a little bit. So quite a few different design details that I have to adjust. So I thought, you know what? I might as well make the vest as is, so then I can see how it looks on me instead of on an illustration. And it should make making the alterations a little bit easier. So I grabbed another leftover piece of fabric for my set. It seems to be a theme here that I did not notice before. This is the third project that I've made just from a scrap leftover from a different project. So this fabric was left over. I don't even know where it came from, but I had used part of it to make a neck warmer a few years ago. Based on my neck warmer tutorial. I love that video. If you have not seen it, you should definitely check it out. It is a fantastic little scarf for winter time. It is super easy, super cute. I wear mine all the time during the winter. But anyway, I had a piece of fabric left over from it, and I was like, I think I can squeeze this on there and make it work, and I did. I squeezed it all on. It was perfect. And I started sewing the vest together, and I got to the collar and realized I was supposed to have 2 collars. I had 1. And I did not have a piece of fabric big enough to cut another one. So I actually had to sew 2 little bitty pieces together and like press them really good in order to have enough to cut the other collar out. And I made sure to put it on the underside so that you don't actually see that there's an extra seam. But I am so happy with how this vest turned out. For one thing, I want to brag on my curved seams. Not how they were sewn, but how they were pressed. Because I do not have a tailor's ham, which is that like curved pressing thing that you put a garment or something over so you can press it with the curve. I don't have one of those. So pressing curved seams is always kind of weird. So instead I grabbed the little teddy bear that I did the tutorial for with the McCall's pattern a while back. I turned it over and I used the bum of the bear as my pressing surface. And as strange as that sounds, it actually worked really well. I got super, super nice curved pressed seams and I'm so happy with them. And I used a vintage sheet to line that vest as well. Let me actually grab the vest. Okay, because I took pictures wearing this vest earlier today and realized I did not take any of the inside. So here is the vintage sheet that I used for the lining. And I'll show you that curved seam right here. I am so happy with it. Like, it looks so nice. I'm so proud of myself. Anyway, so very happy with how this turned out. It is super cute. It is, that top button doesn't match, by the way. It's the same button, but it lost its shine for some reason. It's vintage. And so I put it at the top, so hopefully no one notices. And the top 2 are a different size than the rest. So that's what you get when you use your button stash. These are the same size. Those are different. That one's different color. So yeah, that's what sewing your stash is about. Sometimes things don't match, but I have been using a lot. This is half of my button stash. Half. I've used a lot of buttons since my last Serious Stash update. I used buttons for both my pairs of dungarees, for a different skirt project that I forgot to mention, for my vest, for the little kitty cat dress. I forget. There have been so many projects that I've used lots and lots of buttons on, which is fantastic because I have a ton of them. But anyway, I forget where I was going with that. But yeah, very happy with this. Used every last bit of this fabric, which is amazing. And yeah, patterns. Let's talk about patterns. So another one of the goals that I had added to the challenge 2 years ago, I think, was to use more of my sewing pattern stash. Because what you don't see is under this table is 4 wooden crates that take up the entire space under this large table. And they are stuffed to the brim with patterns. And then I have more besides that. So I have lots and lots and lots of patterns. Over 400. I think it's over 450 now, actually. So I have a ridiculous number of patterns. And I should use them because I love them. So I have been trying to use more patterns. I've used lots of them. So I used the dungaree pattern. I used the vest pattern. I used this pattern. I used a skirt pattern for a costume. I used a shirt pattern for a mock-up that failed. I used the pattern for the bloomers and two different patterns for my pinafore dress for me. A dress pattern for the plaid shirt that went with the pinafore dress. I've used a ton of patterns, at least 10, probably more like 12 or more, which is awesome because that is like a pattern a month on average is kind of what it comes out to. And I think that is fantastic because I have definitely gone periods where I used maybe one pattern in a year. So I'm very happy with that. I definitely still have a lot more patterns to use, but I'm on the right track of actually making use of some of them. Oh, another pattern that I used was a costume pattern for a costume that my daughter requested for Christmas. She asked for a Blue's Clues costume for last Christmas. She actually asked Santa for it, and then she realized Santa probably doesn't know how to sew that. And so then she asked me if I would make it since Santa doesn't know how to do that. So I made her a Blue's Clues pattern, and it turned out very, very cute. I did not use stash for that because it took very specific colors and fabrics. But I did use a pattern for my stash, and then I like self-drafted details for it and stuff, and it turned out very cute. So yeah, another pattern that I managed to use. But anyway, I have rambled a lot. I guess the point of this whole video is I used a lot of fabric. I used a lot of patterns. I used a lot of buttons. I used a lot of fiber fill, and I still have a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, I hope this has encouraged you or that you enjoyed it in some way. I would love to hear what you have been working on, and just a project that has been a win for you recently. Trying to think of what my most favorite win was for this time. I'm thinking it's the puff quilt. I think the puff quilt is my biggest win in the last like year, because I did use a lot of different things for my stash, but also it just felt very rewarding because it holds all those memories of the really cool thing that I was able to do for making all those masks. And I actually used scraps in a very timely manner. So, which is something I'm not usually very good at. I tend to let scraps hang around for a long time. So I think the puff quilt was my favorite make out of all of this. Yeah, I would love to hear what your favorite make or your biggest stash busting win was for the past, I don't know, 6 months or a year or whatever. And if you are not already, you should definitely be following me on Instagram. I will have my Instagram info down below as well, because I have been trying to post a lot more over there and be a little more creative with the pictures that I share over there. So yeah, if you want some more like day-to-day updates and inspiration, definitely follow me on Instagram. And I'm out of practice. I don't remember how to end these. So that's it for today. I hope you've had an enjoyable time, and until next time, happy sewing.